Neverending Nightmares is a two-dimensional psychological horror game that follows Thomas Smith as he experiences a series of nightmares from which he can't seem to escape. Atmosphere. The most prominent thing is the art style. Being almost exclusively in black and white, it makes the environment stark and foreboding, but they also repeat a lot, making them sort of blend together, with long, seemingly endless Victorian corridors or hospital wards of infinite rooms. This paired with the confounding layout and two-dimensional design makes a lot of the environment sort of confusing to traverse, which lends quite well to the nightmarish vibe the game is going for. The music also plays quite a large part with its repetitive melodies and deep reverb, giving off a feeling of a descent into madness. I personally found the gameplay of walking backwards and forwards contained so little variation that despite the game being around an hour long, it started to become boring quite quickly. There really isn't much else to do but walk and open doors. Unfortunately, the enemies are scarcely present throughout the game to break up the monotony as well. Though this may be a deliberate choice to really drive home the impossible length of the corridors and the infinite depth of the dream Thomas is trapped in, it wore thin after a while. Despite this, it still manages to evoke a heady feel regardless. That's one Harry Mason. Scares. The game's scares mostly fall into jump scares and scripted events, with the latter forming segues from one part of the game to the next. Most of the scripted events are illogical, dreamlike horror, but it doesn't seem to be very adventurous with some of the things that you end up seeing, with most of them just being finding your sister has died or something suddenly killing you. There are some jarring, gory scenes that flash up on the screen that sort of bridge a gap between areas, and they can be startling. The jump scares aren't hugely original, with things moving past something very quickly or flashing up briefly with a noise to signify its arrival. They're not always set up very well, with some of them being somewhat predictable and less effective because of it. There are only a few enemies in the game, and bumping into any of them is an instant death. I find some of them are very easy to avoid, where others are a bit more challenging, but they don't add a lot to the scares as much as the gore. Whilst it has some memorable scenes, I found very few of them were impactful. That's still one Harry Mason. Sound design. The game's music is a fantastic selection of disturbing, jangling melodies that repeat and morph into a dirge, like the descending pianos of the opening sequence. The soundtrack uses quite sweet-sounding glockenspiels in such a way that they seem unhinged as the melodies continue to repeat, with the low reverberating drones that play in the background of the tracks, some of them going so far as to feel like they're falling apart, like the music is deteriorating the longer it goes on. The sound effects are all crystal clear and steeped in reverb, with things like the asylum doors closing with a foreboding and satisfying clang, and the stabbing sound effects sounding sickly detailed. The voice acting seems wooden and confusing, but its quality is unmatched, and every now and then you can hear Gabby's voice whisper Thomas's name, which is fun but often seemed random rather than planned. Overall, the sound design is pretty impressive. That's two Harry Masons. Gore. The gore stands out dramatically thanks to the bright red colour in the otherwise monotone game, and its appearance is always sort of confounding, with random cut-open animal bodies being present in the forest to a meat grinder just left in mid-operation on the table in the house. What really stands out are the scripted events and cutscenes where Thomas seems to hurt or kill himself for no reason, with the most impactful one being where he digs into his left arm with his bare hands and tugs on a vein, ripping it from his arm. This is deeply unpleasant, and many of the scenes like this are more disturbing because they don't make any sense as to why Thomas would do something so extreme, or more concerningly, maybe he has no choice but to do it. The death animations are all really gory, with patients drawing blood by sinking their teeth into Thomas's neck and the dolls being able to instantly rip out his insides with seemingly no effort at all. I personally found the latter a bit too weird to be unsettling, but this could again be down to the nightmare logic. The gore is senseless, it's extreme, and it's impossible to ignore, and it really helps make the nightmare feel more disturbing because of its presence. That's 3 Harry Masons. Story. The game opens with Thomas's sister Gabby being stabbed, apparently by Thomas, but this is one of the many false dreams and he awakens and the nightmare begins. The story is somewhat redundant and it's all meant to be a nightmare, so this just means most of what's going on is up for interpretation outside of what the developers have said about Thomas suffering from depression. Whilst this speaks true about the nature of dreams and how most of them are just an incomprehensible series of events strung together with no narrative or through line, as a game experience it comes across as a bit shallow. The game has multiple endings and they vary from sort of climactic to pretty stunted, like a dream cut short, but again, maybe that's the point. It would be nice to know why Thomas is dreaming of these things and what relevance they hold to his life. His sister appears multiple times and either dies or changes roles, being his wife and then his doctor before appearing in an enemy in the asylum trying to kill him. And this sort of leaves us with no idea what to make of her or Thomas himself through the brief dialogue they have together, but with nothing to go on, there isn't a story or plot, and it kind of dulls the experience to be sort of meaningless. It's just a nightmare, and you needn't dwell on it. Making the final score 3 out of 5 Harry Masons. Neverending Nightmares is a confusing series of events, much like the nightmares it emulates. I personally struggled with the game's slow pace keeping my attention, and I think it's an acquired taste. Next time I have a review of Alone in the Dark, the 1992 PC classic. Then after that I've got to take some time off posting videos to work on this year's Halloween event. People supporting on Patreon will be getting early access to as many of the 31 reviews as I get done before October 1st. Wish me luck. Again, I'd like to remind you, this whole thing is down to my opinion in horror games. If you don't share this opinion, then that's cool, I get it. There will always be more horror reviews in the pipeline, and thanks for watching. Always go check out Bumps in the middle of the night. Peace.